Good morning, everybody. Happy hump day to you on this Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. I got all your stories for your rush hour ride to work. We'll start off today talking about Laura Owens, as today is set to be day 2 of her trial against Michael Maricini. Also updates on the Louvre robbers, the idea being that they work with an organized crime unit, and what the next steps might be as the French authorities try to track down those robbers. After that, we'll talk about the ballroom that Trump is building in the White House. But is it legal? And is anyone going to stop him? The answer is no, and probably not. And also more on the shutdown. And we have an oversight committee led by the Republicans saying that Trump is actually not involved at all with the Epstein files, and that Bill Clinton was involved more with Epstein than Trump. And everyone's response is, so just release the files. So we'll get into all these stories and more. And it all starts right now on The Rush. Well, it's a wild time to be alive if you've been following the Justice for Clayton movement. Of course, Clayton Echard, former bachelor, along with Mike Maricini, Greg Gillespie, and other men, all victims of Laura Owens' fraud. She, of course, is charged with 7 felonies, but yesterday was supposed to be her trial against Michael Maricini, where she tries to get her domestic violence restraining order extended from apparently their dating from back in 2016. And of course, he's moved on with a wife and several children. He's claimed he's never, done any of the crimes she's accused him of. And now he's got evidence to help his case, thanks in part to Clayton Echard. Well, here's Clayton Echard, former bachelor, posted by Justice for Clayton official. You can go get all the updates there. Giving the updates. Yesterday was supposed to be the big court day. People came from all over. Megan Fox from New York State and other places looking to get a glimpse at this trial, this 2-day event. Well, the court ended quickly yesterday. The judge told Laura she has to appear in person or her petition for a domestic violence restraining order renewal against Mike would be dismissed. Now, Laura's claims are that she's too sick to appear in person. She actually showed up on Zoom with her attorney and a nurse practitioner. I guess she said that was her doctor. Laura wanted to make the case that she's sick and traveling to San Fran puts her health at risk, but she didn't file the proper motion to have her nurse practitioner testify. So if Laura wants to go to court tomorrow, she's going to need to go to the Arizona courthouse. And again, this is for today. She would have had to do this yesterday. Go to the Arizona courthouse, request an emergency hearing to rule on her travel request. That would mean sitting in the courthouse for hours and waiting. Listen, it's just not going to happen. So will Laura make it? I mean, she could catch a flight to San Francisco. She could also get an Uber, as rumors are that she gets free Ubers for life. I don't know if that's true. Her medical expert, people are looking into, is a telehealth professional online. Laura uses online medical professionals to manipulate her victims and the court system, as we know. Remember, she said she went to certain doctors, and then it turns out she actually only scheduled appointments and never actually went. So again, it's nothing against the nurse practitioner for whatever work they're doing, but Laura's, she's at a impasse, to say it kindly, where she's dealing with the results of her actions, and she wants to make this guy's life go through hell without leaving the comfort of her casita, and the judge is not having any of it. So that's where we stand. I'll have way more updates this afternoon as we find out, did she actually make it? Laura is not allowed to leave the state of Arizona. You know you done effed up when you can't leave the state. You've lost your freedoms, as she, of course, is waiting on her trial set for January of 2026. I, of course, will be there as a star witness. So again, we'll have to see what the updates are. I personally would prefer Laura to be there and have Mike win in person, because if she ends up dismissing this because the judge wouldn't let her leave or whatever the case may be, then she'll just use that as an excuse to say she was wronged again by the system. Updates coming this afternoon. All right, let's go to the conversation about the Louvre heist that happened in Paris and what this organized crime unit, and they are organized, will be doing next.
To me, the most worrisome aspect of what the police have said thus far is that these are organized crime figures. And we don't call it organized crime for no reason. We call it organized crime because they are organized. We should assume that these people know how to handle stolen jewelry. They might even have links from their organization into the jewelry trade itself. They know how to do this with every passing hour, and I mean that hour. The likelihood that we're going to get this stuff back recedes.
Now, look, I've seen polls online where people say, "Do you want them to get away with it? Do you want justice to be served?" And people are kind of 50-50 on this, which really says a lot about society. That there's a lot of people out there that want the jewelry robbers to get away with it. Just, it's kind of like this Robin Hood idea. Not that they'll giving back to you or you or me, but anyway, the question remains: what could they possibly do with this jewelry? These are one-of-a-kind pieces. Are they going to strip them down? Will they use the jewelry as leverage for some sort of ransom? Here's your update.
I think if you look historically at theft of artworks, traditional artworks, it's a bit difficult to move those into the market space, right? They're pretty well known. They're going to be known that they're stolen. And so you're not going to get, their market value. When thieves steal jewelry like this, even historic jewelry and precious metals, that scenario changes a bit, right? Because now the material doesn't have just an artistic commercial value. It has its own intrinsic value as a precious metal or a precious gemstone. So the risk really is high that they might piecemeal this collection out into individual stones, or they may melt down the collection. But I think it's important to point out there are a couple of other scenarios here that local authorities must be considering at the moment, right? And that might be that the thieves are going to hold these pieces for ransom. We've seen that in many similar art heist cases over the years. And they were kind of sloppy, right? This crew, they were pretty good. They were very effective at exploiting this vulnerability, and they were very fast, but they made some mistakes along the way, right? They left behind material, and that material is likely going to yield some positive forensic evidence for the
All right, so they might get caught, but hey, they've got leverage, folks, right? Leverage. And by the way, yes, the Rush Hour podcast is now a museum heist update show. That's what we are. All of your updates in museum heist world coming here. All right, let's do this. Let's reset the deck before we get to the gnarly conversations around this oversight committee saying that Trump's got nothing to do with the Epstein files, nothing to see here. And yet that's, partly why I think they're building this whole ballroom, just to divert attention. Well, we got these updates coming next. Well, as Don Lemon says, the Epstein deflection continues. Have a listen.
Let's be clear. Democrats don't care about transparency or accountability in this matter. The evidence we've gathered does not implicate President Trump in any way. Public reporting, survivor testimony, and official documents show that Bill Clinton had far closer ties to Epstein. Let's be clear.
So here's what's interesting, right? They think that we're going to care that Bill Clinton had close ties with Epstein. Throw him in. They can go do jail time together. Give Trump and Bill Clinton a Groupon. They could be bunk bed mates. I don't care. I think most people, almost everybody that wants the Epstein files released, we don't care if it's Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, or Bill Cosby. Throw them in the clinker if they've done something wrong here. And that's how I feel, and I think that's how everyone feels. Now, will I take Representative James Comer's word for it, Republican from Kentucky? I don't think so. Release the damn files. How about that? Well, here we have the British update. Again, hey, the British, they've got the monarchy, and they got the royal crown jewels, and here's their update on this no kings idea as Trump tears down a whole side of the White House.
I was heading home last night and I saw the first White House pool report, which in this wonderfully calm language informed us that part of the east wing of the White House is being torn down today. Some reporters have spotted the construction from a park near the Treasury Department this afternoon. And I thought that cannot possibly be right. You don't just go and tear down part of the east wing of the White House. And then these pictures started emerging of the wrecking crew having been brought in without any warning by the President of the United States, without any permission, without any planning process that is completed, and there should be one because the National Capital Planning Commission almost certainly has to weigh in. It's a national historic landmark. This is all part of the process of building the ballroom.
And by the way, of course, Trump, as a builder, knows that they would have to deal with this red tape, and that's why they did the whole break ground and ask questions later. Now, listen, I come from a contractor family from a very historic part of Rhode Island. It is very expensive to take historical buildings down to the bones, right? You can't just tear things down. There's so many rules and regulations, not to mention votes that need to be done by Congress. All of this was violated to rip down walls from the White House. Not to mention, what kind of, security threat is this? And all of this going on while our government can't even fund itself. So here's an update from NBC Washington with the question being asked, can a president really remodel the White House? Have a listen.
Can the president actually demolish or remodel the White House? Technically, no. The White House doesn't belong to the president. It's federal property managed by the National Park Service and maintained by taxpayer money. So, while a president can pick the furniture, colors, or decorations, any major changes like tearing down walls or rebuilding require congressional approval and federal funding, according to the White House Historic Association and the National Park Service. The last time that happened was during Harry Truman's presidency, when the building was literally falling apart. Congress approved a full reconstruction in the late 1940s. But here's the twist. Under President Trump, a $200 to $250 million ballroom addition to the East Wing is underway, a 90,000 square foot expansion. The administration says the work can proceed because it's privately funded.
Yeah, and so how wild is this, right? Of course, when this was done in the 40s, it was done with congressional approval. Now, I always love to see the talking points of people that are still sticking up for the president. They are far and few between. They say, well, this president added a bowling alley. This president added, pickleball or whatever, right? They say, and then it's like, well, Trump's literally doubling the floor plan of the White House, and without anyone's approval, and doing it during a government shutdown. And what's so funny to me is those people that say, yeah, but it's with privately funded money. Doesn't that make it a lot worse? So he can basically take one of those deli counter tickets, and everyone who donates $1 million to his Mar-a-Lago fundraiser then gets what, Trump coins or, some sort of deal done, maybe a carve out on the tariffs. So you're going to see, you're going to see Apple and Facebook, sponsoring different, corners of the ballroom, all while a bunch of MAGA people learn the Lindy Hop. I mean, I want to say not on my budget, but it looks like we're all paying for this. Looks like we're all paying for this in one way or another. So here's where it gets really interesting. And boy, isn't it funny when people told me not to talk politics? Listen, what a time to be alive. This is the craziest political year we've had in a very, very long time. Of course, we laugh because we cannot cry. Well, Trump says he's going to privately fund the ballroom, but how about this? A new New York Times report says Donald Trump is seeking $230 million in damages from the U.S. government over the Department of Justice prosecutions when he was not in office. So essentially, he says they owe him money, and he'll just throw that into the ballroom. So nothing to see here, folks. This is making people lose their faith.
That they would owe me a lot of money, but I'm not looking for money. I'd give it to charity or something. I would give it to charity, any money. But look, what they did, they rigged the election. And as you know, we had, in one case, 60 Minutes had to pay us a lot of money. George Slobodanopoulos had to pay us a lot of money.
And by the way, this is the problem with these media companies capitulating to Trump, is that he's now using that as evidence that the election was stolen, even though 60 Minutes and ABC and Disney, they really, and Paramount, they really just paid for, a settlement so they wouldn't have to take something to court. And everyone was upset because these were lawsuits they would have won because they've got that First Amendment right and they're fully protected as press and whatnot, and yet Trump's now using that as examples that he actually won all 3 times he ran for office.
And they already paid. They paid me a lot of money, because what they did was wrong. And, you know, when somebody does what's wrong. Now, with the country, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the decision, right? And, you know, that decision would have to go across my desk. And it's awfully strange to make a decision where I'm paying myself. In other words, did you ever have one of those cases where you have to decide how much you're paying yourself in damages? But I was damaged very greatly, and any money that I would get, I would give to charity.
So there was, Trump was damaged very greatly, as you can tell, as he sits there in the Oval Office. So he says he would give it to charity, but what would it be? Don Jr.'s charity? Like, what charity would he be giving it to? Would it be the charity of building a ballroom? So, you know, you still see people saying Donald Trump doesn't even cash the checks. He doesn't even accept the payments, even though we know in the last 10 months since he's become president, his net worth has literally doubled from like $4 to $9 billion, all because of his crypto scams and whatnot.
Piece of reporting we should note very clearly here that NBC News has not confirmed, suggesting that the president wants the DOJ, the Justice Department, to pay him something like $230 million in compensation for the federal investigations against him, with the New York Times citing multiple people familiar with the matter. We should note here that a White House spokesperson referred questions to the DOJ. The Department of Justice has no comment on the status of the claims.
We don't know exactly what the mechanism would be to pursue this, if he does indeed do that. But this does seem to be something that's been on his mind, perhaps something he's been discussing even with top aides who we see frequently coming in and out of the White House from the Department of Justice. But he said also, interestingly and relatedly to some other major headlines from the White House today, Hallie, that we could use it to, quote, restore the White House, and we're doing a great job with the White House. But he said ultimately you'd have to ask the lawyers about that.
My question for the people that support Trump is, how bad is it going to have to get? He's giving billions of dollars to Argentina. He's basically made it so that American soy farmers cannot make a living. And now he's encouraging people to buy beef from Argentina to help their beef industry, all while leaving ours out to dry, not to mention the tariff wars and all the other insane battles, not to say anything about the ICE raids, tearing apart the fabrics of what makes America, and all of these issues. And it's like, at what point are people going to say, none of this benefits me as an American? And, you know, we've obviously seen that his polling numbers have been historically low, you know, as far as his approval rating goes. But here's just a few tweets from some folks out there. Maria Shriver, again, a Kennedy, says, "This breaks my heart and infuriates me. Hundreds of millions of dollars to build a new ballroom. Good God." Jerry Green said St. Jude reduced its budget by $150 million because the White House blindly cut funding to children's cancer research. Hashtag priorities. How does tearing down the White House to build a ballroom help the American people? $250 million for his ballroom, $40 billion for Argentina, $172 million for Kristi Noem's 2 private jets, $0 to lower your healthcare premiums. Yeah, people are starting to post their healthcare premiums. One person's monthly premium went from $50 a month to $2,100 a month. You guys can check for yourself and see what's going to happen out there. This is why the Democrats have kept the government shut down, to prevent them from stripping away all of these subsidies, which are helping people get basic the human right of health insurance. Aaron Recklin Melnick said it would appear that he's tearing down the entire East Wing without any congressional oversight or legal approval, even though he doesn't own the building and is using reportedly private money for the entire thing, not government funding. Here we have Senator Schatz talking about the money.
This is not about money. There is enough money to bail out Argentina with $20 billion. There is
40
enough money to purchase a brand new aircraft for $173 million for the Homeland Security Secretary. There is enough money to renovate the White House ballroom. What there's not enough money for under this Republican government is you. There's not enough money for you. And it is astonishing to me that the party in charge of the government literally won't show up to work during the second longest shutdown in American history. House Republicans have been gone for more than a month. More than a month. They've worked 2 weeks out of the last 3 months. Nice work if you can get it. This is not.
Yeah, so there it is. And what's the American public going to do about it, right? At what point are they going to completely flip on this government? These are the questions. And how about this? A pardoned Capitol rioter has been arrested for allegedly threatening to kill Hakeem Jeffries. Again, we saw those blanket pardons come in early on in the new presidency. And of course, I was all about pardoning nonviolent offenders. If you were walking through the Capitol building, it's like, come on, you were caught up. Let's move on with life. But the fact that these violent offenders were all pardoned, and now we're seeing that a lot of political violence coming from those same people that felt the need to run into the Capitol and, take a dump on Nancy Pelosi's desk or whatever the heck they were doing, looking for, Mike Pence, and all of that stuff. It's a wild time out there. It's a wild time. But I guess the question that people need to ask is, when is the energy going to go from thinking it's a left versus right issue and realizing it's an up versus down issue? The middle class being robbed by the upper class and also the lower middle class. But really, it's just a couple dozen billionaires, the president, all of the cronies that exist in that little community of theirs. They're the ones pulling the strings, doing carve-outs for people to avoid the tariffs where he sees fit, really just operating as a monarchy. But as people have said in the UK, even in a monarchy, they would have still needed Parliament's approval to do something to the royal buildings. They don't just get to tear them down. So again, what'll come next? The vision of a piece of the White House, the America's building, right? The building, the house of the people, the seeing just the walls torn down. Boy, could that not be more apropos? That's it for us this morning. We'll have so many updates coming this afternoon regarding Laura Owens and so much more. So stick around for all those stories. We'll see you then. I'm Dave, and this is The Rush.